Hello, my dear English learners. Welcome back to English Practice with Julia. I'm Julia, and I'm truly so happy to have you here with me today. If this is your first time here, then let me warmly welcome you. Please feel relaxed and comfortable. You do not need perfect English to join this lesson. You only need a little time, a little patience, and the willingness to learn. And I'll be here to guide you gently, step by step, every single day. We upload a new English learning video every day, so you can keep practicing in a calm, easy, and consistent way without pressure. Today, I want you to think of this lesson as a cozy English conversation, just you and me, learning together in a simple and peaceful way. There is no need to hurry, and there is no need to feel nervous. We are going to gently improve your listening, your speaking, and your confidence in everyday English. So if you can, please take a pen and some paper and keep them near you. It's not a rule, of course, but it can really help you remember new words, useful phrases, vowel, and natural sentence patterns more easily. And it can help you feel more confident as you practice. Now, today's topic is everyday English conversations at the B1 to B2 level. And this is such an important step in your English journey, because at this level, you are no longer learning only single words or very basic sentences. You are learning how to express your thoughts more clearly, how to respond more naturally, and how to keep a real conversation going in daily life. In this lesson, you will hear the kind of English people really use every day, the kind of English you can use at home, at work, with friends, in shops, while traveling, and in so many common situations. We'll go through natural, real-life conversations that sound clear, warm, and practical, the kind of English that helps you move from understanding simple ideas to speaking with more fluency and ease. Together, we'll listen carefully to how sentences flow, how people answer questions, how they continue a conversation, and how small, natural expressions can make your English sound more smooth and more confident. You'll learn useful phrases, helpful responses, and everyday patterns that you can use again and again in your own speaking. You'll also discover that everyday English is not only about knowing vocabulary. It is also about knowing how to react, how to ask follow-up questions, how to show interest, how to explain your opinion, and how to sound natural in common situations. So by the end of this lesson, I want you to feel calmer, stronger, and more comfortable with everyday conversations. And I want you to say to yourself, yes, I can understand more. And yes, I can speak more naturally too. Before we begin, may I ask you for one small and kind favor? If you enjoy learning English with me in this calm and friendly way, please subscribe and press the bell icon, too. That way, you won't miss our daily lessons, and it also supports me so I can keep creating these gentle lessons for you. Thank you so much, truly. I really appreciate it. Now I want you to practice with me in a relaxed way. Imagine your friend Daniel messages you in the afternoon and asks, "Hey, how's your day going?" You do not need a complicated answer, but you do want a real answer. You might say, "It's going well so far. I had a busy morning, but now things are a little calmer." Or, honestly, I'm a bit tired today, but I'm doing okay. Or, it's been good. I finally finished something I was working on. Can you feel the difference? These answers are still simple, but they sound personal, natural, and human. Wart, that is what makes a conversation feel real. So here is a small speaking exercise for you. You can say it out loud or write it on paper. Imagine 3 different moods for your day: a good day, a stressful day, and a relaxed day. For a good day, you could say, "My day's been really nice so far. I got a lot done, and I'm in a good mood." For a stressful day, you could say, "It's been a bit stressful, to be honest. I've had a lot to deal with today." For a relaxed day, you could say, "It's been quite peaceful. I've just been taking things slowly." This is how you begin building flexible English. Not one fixed answer, but several natural ways to express yourself. And another very common everyday situation is meeting someone you know and having a short catch-up conversation. This happens with neighbors, classmates, co-workers, cousins, old friends, or even someone you have not seen for a few weeks. In these moments, English speakers often ask about life in a slightly wider way. They might say, "What have you been up to? How have things been? What's new with you?" Or, "How's everything going?" These questions invite a more open answer. For example, if your coworker says, "What have you been up to lately?" you could answer, "Not too much, really. I've mostly been working and trying to rest in the evenings." Or, "I've been pretty busy lately. I started a new course last month, so that's been taking a lot of my time." Or even, "A lot, actually. I moved to a new apartment, so the last few weeks have been a little crazy." Notice how these answers give the other person something to continue with. If you say, "I moved to a new apartment," the other person can ask, "Oh, really? How do you like the new place?" And now the conversation moves forward naturally. That is a very useful skill. Giving answers that invite connection. Let's build that skill a little more. Imagine this short conversation. "Hi, Mia. Long time no see. How have you been?" "I've been good, thanks. Just really busy with family stuff and work. What about you?" "Pretty good. I've been trying to get back into a healthier routine." "That sounds nice. Are you exercising again?" "Yeah, a little. Mostly walking in the evenings." This conversation is simple, but it feels real, and that is exactly what you want. You are not trying to sound like a speech. You are trying to sound like yourself. Here is your next practice exercise. I want you to imagine someone asks you, "What's new with you?" Try answering in a way that gives one small update about your life. You could talk about work, studies, health, family, hobbies, weekend plans, or even your mood lately. You might say, "I've been trying to improve my routine recently. I've started waking up earlier." Or, "I've been spending more time reading these days, and I'm really enjoying it." Or, To be honest, not much is new. But I've been trying to focus more on my English practice. All of these work beautifully, and all of them sound natural. Now let's move into another very important part of everyday English conversations, talking about routines and daily habits. This is something people do all the time, especially when they are getting to know each other better. Someone may ask, "What do you usually do after work? How do you normally spend your weekends? What's your morning routine like?" Or, "Do you cook at home very often?" At the B1 to B2 level, it is useful to answer these questions with a little detail. Not too much, but enough to sound natural and interesting. For example, if someone asks, "What do you usually do after work?" You could say, "I usually take a short break when I get home. Then I make dinner and try to relax for a while." Or, "Most days I go straight home. But sometimes I stop by a cafe or do a bit of shopping first." Or, "It depends on the day, but I often spend my evenings catching up on things I didn't finish earlier." These kinds of answers sound much more natural than very short ones like, "I go home," because they show rhythm, sequence, and personality. Let's practice that together in a more conversational way. Imagine your friend asks, "What's your weekend usually like?" You could answer, "My weekends are usually pretty quiet. I like to rest, clean the house a little, and maybe meet a friend for coffee." Another answer could be, "It depends. Some weekends are busy, especially if I have family plans. But if I'm free, I like staying home and watching something relaxing." Or maybe your style is more active. Then you could say, "I try not to stay home all weekend. I usually go out at least once, even if it's just for a walk or to run errands." Can you hear how these answers create a picture? That is something you should practice often, painting a small picture with your words. Not because you need perfect grammar every second, but because conversation becomes easier when you learn to describe your life in a simple, flowing way. So here is your exercise. Think about your real weekday routine and describe it in 4 or 5 natural sentences. Then do the same for your weekend. Try to use words like usually, sometimes, often, normally, once in a while, and lately. These words help your English sound more natural and flexible. Another skill that becomes very important at the B1 to B2 level is knowing how to react when another person tells you something. Many learners focus only on how to answer questions about themselves. But real conversation also depends on reaction language. These are the small expressions that show interest, surprise, understanding, support, or curiosity. For example, if someone says, "I've been really tired lately," you could react by saying, "Oh no, have you been sleeping enough?" If someone says, "I'm thinking of changing jobs," you could say, "Really? What made you start thinking about that?" If someone says, "I finally passed my driving test," you could say, "That's great. You must be so relieved." Reaction language is powerful because it makes the other person feel heard and it keeps the conversation alive. Without reaction language, conversations often stop too quickly. With it, your English starts sounding warm, present, and natural. Let's look at a small everyday example. I didn't sleep well last night. Really? That's the worst. Was something bothering you? Yeah. I had a lot on my mind. I get that. I've had nights like that too. This exchange is not complicated, but it feels human, and that is what matters. So I want you to practice this idea now. I will give you a sentence someone says, and you imagine a natural reaction. Someone says, I'm late because the traffic was terrible. You could react with, oh, that sounds frustrating. Someone says, I've started learning how to cook. You could say, that's nice. What have you made so far? Someone says, I'm feeling a bit nervous about tomorrow. You could answer, that's understandable. Do you want to talk about it? This kind of English is deeply useful in real life because conversation is not only about information, it is also about emotional connection. Before we stop for this section, I want to leave you with one more important reminder. You do not need to rush when you speak English. In real daily conversations, calm speakers often sound more confident than fast speakers. If you need a second to think, take it. If you want to answer in a simple way first and then add more detail, that is completely fine. For example, if someone asks, how have you been lately? You can begin with, pretty good, and then continue. I've just been a little busy with work. That is natural. If someone asks, what do you usually do in the evenings? You can begin with, usually I stay home, and then add, but sometimes I meet a friend or go for a walk. This is a very helpful speaking habit. Answer simply first, then expand naturally. It gives your mind time, and it makes your English sound steady instead of stressed. Imagine a friend says, are you free on Saturday afternoon? A very simple learner answer might be, yes, I am free, and that is correct. But in real conversation, people often say a little more. They might say, I think so. What did you have in mind? Or, I should be free. Why? Or, Saturday afternoon should work for me. What are you planning? These answers sound relaxed and natural. They also help the conversation continue. Now imagine the answer is no. You do not need to sound rude or too direct. You could say, I'd love to, but I already have plans that day. Or, I'm not free on Saturday, unfortunately, but maybe another time. Or, that sounds nice, but I think I'll be busy this weekend. This kind of language is extremely useful because everyday English is not only about grammar, it is also about tone, and tone matters a lot in daily conversations. Let's listen to a natural example together. Hey, are you free after work tomorrow? I might be. What's up? A few of us are thinking of going out for dinner. That sounds nice, actually. What time were you thinking? Probably around 7. Okay, I think I can make that. Notice how natural this feels. No one is using difficult vocabulary, but the conversation moves smoothly because each person gives just enough information and each answer opens the door to the next one. This is a good model for you to practice. You do not need complicated English to sound natural. You need useful patterns, good rhythm, and the confidence to keep the conversation going. Now, let's practice invitations a little more deeply. Imagine 3 situations. In the first situation, your friend asks you to join them for lunch, and you want to accept. You might say, "Sure, that sounds good. I could use a break." Or, "Yes, definitely. I'd love to join you." Or, "That would be nice. I haven't eaten out in a while." In the second situation, you want to refuse politely. You could say, "Thanks for asking, but I need to finish something first." Or, "I'd like to, but I've got too much to do today." Or, "Maybe another day. I'm a bit tied up at the moment." In the third situation, you are interested, but you are not completely sure yet. Then you could say, "I'm not sure yet, but I'll let you know soon." Or, "I might be able to. I just need to check something first." Or, possibly, "What time are you thinking?" This is the kind of real flexibility that makes your English feel strong. And I really want you to practice it, because in real life, people rarely speak in only yes or no. They usually soften their answer, explain a little, and keep the mood friendly. Another very common part of daily conversation is talking about small problems. Not huge dramatic problems, but ordinary life problems. Being late, forgetting something, losing your keys, having a bad connection on the phone, feeling tired, missing a bus, dealing with traffic, or finding out that a shop is closed. These situations create many natural conversations, and they are very useful for B1 to B2 learners because they teach you how to explain what happened, how to apologize, how to ask for understanding, and how to respond kindly when someone else has a problem. For example, if you are running late and need to message someone, you might say, "I'm so sorry. I'm running a little late." Or, "I'm on my way, but traffic is worse than usual." Or, "Sorry, something came up and I'm a bit behind." These are all very common and natural. Now imagine your friend replies. Their reaction also matters. They might say, "No worries, take your time." Or, "That's okay. I've only just arrived myself." Or, "Don't worry about it. I understand." These little replies are simple, but they are very important in real conversation. They create comfort, patience, and connection. Let's imagine a fuller conversation. "Hey, I'm really sorry. I'm going to be about 15 minutes late." That's fine. "I just got here a few minutes ago." "Thanks for understanding. The bus took forever." "No problem. I'll just wait inside. This is everyday English at its most practical, and it is exactly the kind of language you want to feel comfortable using. Let's practice another kind of small daily problem: asking for help when something is missing or unclear. This happens constantly in real life. You may need to ask where something is. Ask someone to repeat themselves. Ask for clarification, or ask someone to help you solve a small issue. For example, you might say, "Sorry, have you seen my phone anywhere?" Or, "Could you help me with this for a second?" Or, "I'm not sure I understood that. Could you explain it again?" Or, "Do you happen to know where the nearest pharmacy is?" I want you to notice that in daily English, soft language is very common. People often say, "Could you?" "Would you mind?" "Do you happen to know?" And "I'm not sure," because these phrases make the conversation sound polite and natural, not demanding. Imagine you are at work and you need help with a task. You could say, "Excuse me, could you show me how this works?" Or, "Do you have a minute? I just need a little help with something." Or, "I'm having trouble with this part. Would you mind taking a quick look?" These phrases are extremely useful because asking for help is a normal part of life. And being able to do it clearly and politely makes your English more functional, more confident, and more real. Now imagine the other person replies. They might say, "Sure, let me have a look." Or, "Of course, what seems to be the problem?" Or, "Yeah, no problem. Show me what you've got so far." Do you see how natural this rhythm is? One person asks in a soft and clear way, and the other person answers in a calm and helpful way. This is the kind of pattern that you can use again and again in many situations. Now I want to move into another everyday skill that is especially important at the B1 to B2 level. Expressing preferences and opinions in a natural way. In daily life, people are constantly saying what they like, what they do not like, what they would rather do, what they think about something, and how they feel about different options. Someone may ask, "Do you prefer tea or coffee? What do you think of this restaurant? Would you rather stay in or go out tonight? How do you feel about working from home?" Or, "Do you like living here?" At this level, I want you to move beyond very short answers like "I like it" or "It is good." Instead, try giving a fuller answer with a reason. For example, if someone asks, "Do you prefer tea or coffee?" you could say, "I usually prefer coffee in the morning, but in the evening I tend to drink tea because it feels lighter." That answer is simple, but it sounds much more natural and mature. Let's build this skill together. Imagine someone asks, "What do you think of the new cafe near the station?" You could say, "I've only been there once, but I liked it. It had a relaxed atmosphere and the coffee was pretty good." Another answer could be, "It's nice enough, but I think it's a bit overpriced." Or maybe, "I actually really liked it. It feels comfortable and it's a good place to sit and talk." These are all strong everyday answers because they do two things. They give your opinion and they support it with a reason. That second step is very important at the B1 to B2 level. Not only saying what you think, but also saying why, even in a simple way. Here is a useful daily practice for you. Imagine someone asks you these three questions. Do you like busy places? Would you rather cook at home or eat out? And what kind of weather do you enjoy most? Try answering each one in 2 or 3 flowing sentences. For example, you might say, I don't mind busy places sometimes, but if I'm tired, I usually prefer somewhere quiet. Or, I enjoy eating out once in a while. But most of the time, I prefer cooking at home because it feels healthier and more relaxing. Or, I love mild weather, especially when it's sunny but not too hot. It just makes everything feel easier. This kind of practice helps your English become more natural because it reflects real life. People talk about preferences all the time. And when you can explain your preferences clearly, conversations become much easier. Another very important part of everyday conversation is talking about plans for the near future, not just invitations, but what you are going to do later today, tomorrow, this weekend, or next week. You may hear things like, what are you up to later? Do you have anything planned for tonight? What are you doing this weekend? Or are you going away during the holidays? These are such common questions, and they are perfect for practicing natural future language. You do not always need very advanced grammar. In daily conversation, simple future forms work beautifully. You can say, I'm meeting a friend later. I'm probably just going to stay home tonight. I haven't decided yet. Or, I'm thinking of taking a short trip next month. These kinds of answers are extremely common. Let's hear a natural conversation about weekend plans. Do you have anything planned for the weekend? Not much, really. I might visit my sister on Sunday. That sounds nice. Do you see her often? Not as often as I'd like. So, it'll be good to catch up. This short exchange is excellent practice because it shows how one question leads to another and how the conversation grows through interest. If you only answer with yes or no, the conversation ends too fast. But if you give one small detail, it keeps going naturally. That is something I want you to remember again and again. One small detail can keep a conversation alive. It does not need to be a big story, just a small, real detail. Now let's move into the language of changing plans, because that happens all the time in life, and you need natural English for it. Imagine you had plans to meet someone, but now you need to change the time. You could say, would it be okay if we met a little later? Or, something's come up. Could we move it to tomorrow? Or, I'm really sorry, but I need to reschedule. These are very real phrases, and they come up all the time. Now imagine the other person responds. They might say, sure, that's no problem. or tomorrow actually works better for me. Or that's okay. Just let me know what time suits you. This is the kind of conversation that makes you feel functional in English because it is practical, polite, and useful in ordinary life. Let's practice a slightly longer example. Hey, I'm really sorry, but I don't think I can make it this evening. Oh, no problem. Is everything okay? Yeah. I just got caught up with something and I'm running out of time. That's all right. We can do it another day. Thanks. I really appreciate that. Of course. Just message me when you're free. This is simple everyday English, but it is full of useful expressions. I don't think I can make it. I got caught up with something. We can do it another day. I really appreciate that. These are the kinds of phrases that make your English feel more adult, more natural, and more socially comfortable. Now I want to spend a little time on something that helps conversations sound more natural, and that is follow-up questions. This is one of the biggest differences between basic conversation and more confident B1 to B2 conversation. At a lower level, many learners answer questions, but they do not always know how to continue the exchange. Follow-up questions help you do that. If someone says, I went to visit my cousin last weekend, you can ask, oh, really? Where does your cousin live? Now, if someone says, I've been trying to eat healthier lately, you can ask, how's that going for you? If someone says, I'm thinking of taking a course, you can say, what kind of course are you interested in? These questions are not difficult, but they make you sound engaged, curious, and natural. Let's imagine a conversation without follow-up questions. I went away for the weekend. Oh, nice. And then silence. That happens sometimes, but it often feels awkward. Now, let's imagine the same moment with a follow-up question. I went away for the weekend. Oh, nice. Where did you go? I went to a small town by the coast. That sounds lovely. Was it relaxing? And can you feel the difference? The conversation has life now. And that is exactly what follow-up questions do. They show interest, and they give the other person space to continue. I strongly recommend that you practice this skill often, because it will make a huge difference in your everyday English. Here is a good speaking exercise for you. I will give you a statement, and you think of one natural follow-up question. The statement is, I finally finished the book I was reading. A good question could be, did you enjoy it? Or, what did you think of the ending? Another statement. I'm going to visit my parents this weekend. You could ask, do they live far from you? Or, how long are you staying there? That's another one. I've been feeling really tired lately. And you could ask, have you been sleeping well? Or, do you think you've just been too busy? These follow-up questions are simple, but they turn English into real communication. Let's slow that down and make it feel real. Imagine you walk into a small cafe after a long day. The person at the counter smiles and says, "What can I get for you today?" You answer, "Could I have a medium latte, please? And also one chocolate muffin." Then they ask, "For here or to go?" And you say, "To go, please." Then maybe they ask, "Anything else?" And you answer, "No, that's all. Thanks." This is a very ordinary conversation, but it is full of useful rhythm, useful politeness, and useful decision-making language. I want you to notice how often English speakers soften requests with phrases like, "Could I have?" "Can I get?" or "Would it be possible to?" These phrases are friendly and natural, and they are more common in daily conversation than very direct sentences like, "Give me a coffee," which can sound too strong or unnatural in many situations. Now let's practice this in a more flexible way. Imagine you want to ask for something that is not directly in front of you. Maybe sugar, maybe napkins, maybe the bill, maybe a menu. In these situations, polite request language becomes very important. You could say, "Could I have some extra napkins, please? Would you mind bringing the bill when you have a moment? Could we see the menu again?" Or, "Can I get another glass of water, please?" These are wonderfully useful daily expressions, and once you become comfortable with them, you will start noticing how often people use them in real life. Now imagine the other person replies. They might say, "Of course," "Sure, no problem," "I'll bring that right over," or "Absolutely, just give me a second." These short replies are just as important to understand because public conversations often move quickly, and you need to feel comfortable with both sides of the exchange. Here is a gentle speaking exercise for you. Imagine you are sitting in a cafe with a friend, and you need 3 things during your visit. First, you want to ask for the menu. Second, you want to ask whether they have anything without sugar. And third, you want to ask for the bill. You could say, "Excuse me, could we have the menu, please?" Then later, "Do you happen to have anything without sugar?" Then at the end, "Could we get the bill when you have a moment?" Notice the rhythm of these requests. They are polite, clear, and calm. This is the kind of English that helps you move through daily life more naturally. And I want you to practice these little phrases again and again until they begin to feel automatic. Now let's move from cafes to shopping situations. Because shopping conversations are extremely common, and they teach you how to ask for information, check details, compare options, and solve small problems. Someone in a shop may ask, "Can I help you? Are you looking for anything in particular? Would you like to try this on?" Or, "Do you need a bag?" If you are just looking around, you can say, "I'm just browsing, thanks," which is a very natural phrase. If you need help, you might say, "Yes, actually, I'm looking for a jacket," or "I was wondering if you have this in a different size," or "Do you happen to have this in blue?" These are all normal, everyday questions. Ciao. And they are excellent for B1 to B2 learners because they combine politeness with practical information. Imagine a simple clothing shop conversation. Hi, can I help you with anything? Yes, please. I'm looking for a sweater. Sure. What kind of sweater are you after? Something simple and not too heavy. All right. We have a few over here. Thanks. Do you have this in a larger size? Let me check for you. This is a very good example of daily English because the conversation is not dramatic, but it is interactive, polite, and practical. You are describing what you need, asking questions, and responding naturally. That is exactly the kind of English you want to strengthen. Now imagine a slightly different situation. You buy something, but later there is a small problem. Maybe the size is wrong. Maybe the item is damaged. Or maybe you were charged for the wrong thing. In these situations, calm explanation language is very helpful. You might say, "Hi, I bought this yesterday, but I noticed there's a problem with it." Or, "I think I may have been charged twice." Or, "I was wondering if it would be possible to exchange this for a different size." These phrases are polite, but they also clearly explain the issue, and that balance is very important in real life. You do not want to sound aggressive, but you also want to express yourself clearly. If the staff member replies, they may say, "Let me take a look. Do you have the receipt with you? That shouldn't have happened." Or, "We can exchange it if the label is still attached." This kind of language is deeply useful because it helps you handle everyday situations without panic or confusion. Let's now move into another area of daily conversation that many learners find difficult: handling misunderstandings. This is such an important skill because even advanced speakers sometimes mishear something, misunderstand a detail, or need someone to repeat themselves. There is nothing wrong with that. In fact, what matters is knowing how to manage it naturally. If you do not understand what someone said, you can say, "Sorry, I didn't catch that." Or, "Could you say that again?" Or, "I'm sorry. What did you say?" Or, "Do you mean today or tomorrow?" These are calm, normal, and very useful ways to keep the conversation going. They are much better than freezing, smiling silently, or pretending you understood when you did not. Let's hear a natural example. The meeting's been moved to 3:15. Sorry, I didn't catch the time. 3:15. Oh, okay, thanks. That is a tiny conversation, but it shows something important. Asking for repetition is normal, and people do it all the time. Here is another example. I'll send it over later this afternoon. Sorry. When exactly do you mean by later? Probably around 4. Perfect. Thanks. These exchanges are simple, but they are strong everyday communication because they prevent confusion and they show that you are paying attention. Now, I want you to practice a few misunderstanding phrases in a natural way. Imagine someone speaks too quickly. You could say, "Sorry, could you speak a little more slowly?" Imagine you heard most of the sentence, but one word was unclear. You could say, "Sorry, what was the last part?" Imagine you are not sure whether you understood correctly. You could say, "So just to make sure I understood, we're meeting at 6, right?" Or, "If I understood you correctly, now you want me to email you tomorrow." These are excellent B1 to B2 patterns because they help you check information without sounding unnatural. They also make you sound more confident because you are actively managing the conversation rather than getting lost inside it. Another everyday conversation skill that matters a lot is making polite requests in shared spaces. This happens in offices, homes, classrooms, waiting rooms, public transport, and many other daily environments. You might need to ask someone to open a window, lower their voice, move slightly, pass something to you, or give you a moment of their time. In these situations, tone is everything. You could say, "Excuse me. Each of you, would you mind closing the window? Could you move over a little, please? Would it be possible to turn the music down a bit? Or, do you have a second?" These requests are very common, and they work well because they are soft but clear. They respect the other person while still expressing what you need. Let's imagine a daily office conversation. "Hey, do you have a minute?" "Sure. What's up?" "I just wanted to ask if you could look over this email before I send it." "Yeah, of course. Send it to me." This is simple, but it sounds very natural, and it uses a great everyday phrase. Do you have a minute? That phrase is useful everywhere, at work, at school, or even at home, because it is a friendly way to ask for someone's time. Another example could be, "Excuse me, would you mind keeping an eye on my bag for a second while I grab a coffee?" Again, very natural, very useful, and very human. These are the kinds of expressions that help everyday English feel real in your mouth. Now let's talk about conversations on the phone, because phone English can feel a little harder. You cannot always see the other person's face, so you depend more on listening, clarity, and short confirmation phrases. Everyday phone conversations include calling a friend, answering a call, leaving a message, asking to speak to someone, and confirming simple information. Someone may answer the phone by saying, "Hello? Hi, this is Julia. Hey, how are you?" Or in a more formal situation, "Good afternoon. This is the front desk." If you call someone and ask for another person, you might say, "Hi, is Daniel there?" Or, "Could I speak to Emma, please?" If that person is unavailable, you may hear, "She's not here at the moment," or "He's stepped out for a bit." Then you can respond with something like, "Okay, I'll call back later," or Could you ask him to call me when he gets a chance? These are such useful everyday phrases, especially because phone calls require you to be clear and calm. Let's listen to a short phone conversation. Hi. Is Olivia there? She's in the shower right now. Can I take a message? Sure. Could you tell her Julia called? Of course. Do you want her to call you back? Yes, please, when she has time. This conversation is gentle, practical, and full of common everyday language. Can I take a message? Could you tell her? Call you back. These are exactly the kinds of phrases that build real-life comfort in English. Now let's practice making an appointment or arranging a service, because this is another common daily task. Maybe you need to book a haircut, arrange a doctor's visit, schedule a repair, or make a reservation. In these conversations, people often say, I'd like to book an appointment. Do you have anything available on Friday? What times do you have open? Or, I'm calling to make a reservation for 2. If the other person replies, they may say, we have an opening at 10:30. Would afternoon work for you? The earliest we have is Monday. Or, could I take your name, please? This is functional English, and it matters a lot because it helps you manage real life with more independence. And that independence builds confidence very quickly. Imagine this simple exchange. Hi, I'd like to make an appointment for sometime next week. Sure. What day were you hoping for? Do you have anything on Tuesday afternoon? We have something at 2:30. That should be fine. Thank you. Very ordinary, but very important. And once again, you can hear that daily English does not have to be complicated to be effective. It just needs to be clear, polite, and steady. I also want to spend some time on chatting in a more relaxed social way, because not every daily conversation is about solving a problem or asking for something. Sometimes you are simply talking to be friendly. You may be waiting somewhere, walking with a coworker, standing near a neighbor, or sitting beside someone before a class starts. In these moments, people often make light conversation about ordinary things. The weather, the day, how busy things have been, what they did recently, or what they are looking forward to. These small conversations are often called small talk, and they are a very valuable skill at the B1 to B2 level. Not because the topics are deep, but because they help you feel socially comfortable in English. For example, if you meet a neighbor outside, you might say, "It's a beautiful evening, isn't it?" Or, "You're home a bit earlier than usual today." Or, "Have you been busy lately?" If a coworker is making coffee in the office kitchen, you might say, "It already feels like a long day." Or, "I can't believe it's only Tuesday." Or, "Have you got much left to do today?" These kinds of comments are light, easy, and natural. They are not big, important conversations, but they help create warmth and connection. That matters a lot. especially if you want your English to feel more relaxed and less mechanical. Let's imagine a natural small talk exchange. Morning. How's your day been so far? Pretty busy, actually. I haven't even had time to sit down properly yet. Hopefully, the afternoon will be a bit calmer. Let's hope so. This is excellent everyday English, and it shows something very important. Small talk often grows from shared experience, being busy, feeling tired, noticing the weather, talking about the day, or making a light comment about something happening around you. Once you learn a few of these patterns, starting conversations becomes much easier. Here is a speaking exercise you can do right now. Imagine you are in 4 different daily situations: waiting in a cafe, meeting a coworker in the hallway, talking to a neighbor outside your building, and standing in line at a shop. In each situation, think of one natural opening line and one possible follow-up question. In the cafe, you might say, "It's quite busy in here today. Do you come here often?" In the hallway, you might say, "How's your day going?" And then, "Have you got much planned for the afternoon?" With a neighbor, you might say, "I haven't seen you in a few days. Everything okay?" In the shop line, you might say something very light like, "It always seems busiest at this time of day." These are small moments, but they are full of real English. I want you to notice something important. When people talk about stress or tiredness, the other person often does not give a big dramatic answer. They usually react in a soft and supportive way. They may say, "That sounds tiring. I'm sorry to hear that. I can imagine. That must be a lot." Or, "Hopefully things calm down soon." These responses are small, but they matter because they show understanding, and they help the conversation continue in a natural way. For example, "I've been feeling pretty stressed lately." I'm sorry to hear that. Is it mainly work? Mostly, yes, and a few other things as well. That makes sense. Hopefully, you'll get a chance to rest soon. This is excellent everyday English because it is emotionally natural, not too formal, and not too cold. Let's practice that together. Imagine a friend says, "I haven't been sleeping well recently." You could respond with, "Oh no, that's the worst. Have you been under a lot of stress?" Or maybe someone says, "I've had such a long day." You could say, "I can tell. You look exhausted." Or, "Yeah, those days can really drain you." If someone says, "I'm actually feeling much better this week," you could respond with, "That's good to hear." Or, "I'm really glad things are improving." These little emotional responses help your English become warmer, more present, and more socially natural. And they are very important if you want to feel comfortable in real conversations. Of course, daily conversations are not only about negative feelings. People also talk about good moods, relief, excitement, gratitude, and enjoyment. Someone may say, "I'm in such a good mood today." I'm so relieved that's finally over. I'm really looking forward to the weekend. I'm excited about tomorrow. Or, I had a really nice evening yesterday. These are wonderful chances to practice positive reaction language. You can say, "That's great. You deserve it. That sounds lovely. I'm happy for you." Or, "You seem much more relaxed today." Let's imagine a short exchange. "I finally finished that project I was working on." That's such a relief. You must feel so much lighter now. Honestly, I really do. This sounds natural, encouraging, and human, and that is exactly the kind of tone you want to build in your English. Now let's move into talking about work and study, because these are some of the most common everyday conversation topics at the B1 to B2 level. People often ask about how work is going, what someone is studying, whether things have been busy, what kind of tasks they do, or how they feel about their routine. You may hear questions like, "How's work been lately? Are you still studying in the evenings? Have things been busy at the office? What are you working on these days?" Or, "How are your classes going?" These questions appear constantly in adult conversation, and they are perfect for learning how to give fuller, more natural answers. Not too long, but not too empty either. For example, if someone asks, "How's work been lately?" you could say, "It's been pretty busy, actually. We've had a lot to do over the past couple of weeks." Or, "Not too bad. It's been a little stressful, but manageable." Or, "Honestly, it's been better than usual. Things feel more organized now." These answers work well because they do not stop at one word. They add a little detail, and that detail creates space for the conversation to continue. If someone asks, "Are you still studying in the evenings?" you might say, "Yes, although I've been a bit inconsistent lately." Or, "I am, but I'm trying not to overdo it." Or, "Not as much as before, but I still try to do something a few times a week." All of these sound natural, flexible, and realistic. Let's listen to a natural work conversation. "How's work been recently?" "Quite busy, to be honest. I've had a lot of deadlines this month." "That sounds intense. Are things going smoothly at least?" "More or less. And it's just been a lot all at once." "Yeah, that can be exhausting." This is a very realistic exchange because it includes detail, reaction, and follow-up questions. It does not sound like a textbook. It sounds like daily life. And that is exactly where your English needs to grow, into the language of daily life. Now imagine a study-related conversation. "Are you still taking that online course?" "Yeah, I'm still doing it, although I've fallen a little behind." "That happens. Are you enjoying it at least?" "I am, actually. It's really interesting. I just need more time for it." This is excellent B1 to B2 English because it shows how people talk honestly, lightly, and naturally. They do not always sound perfect, but they sound real. That is your goal here. Not speaking like a perfect script, but speaking like a real person with natural thoughts and reactions. Here is a useful practice exercise. Imagine someone asks you 3 very common daily questions. How's work been? What are you working on these days? And have you been learning anything new lately? Try answering each one with 2 or 3 natural sentences. For the first question, you might say, "Work's been a little hectic lately, but I'm managing. I'm just trying to stay organized." For the second, you could say, "Right now, I'm focused on a project that's taking more time than I expected," or "Nothing too exciting. Mostly just my usual tasks." For the third, you might say, "Yes, I've been trying to improve my English more seriously." Or, "I've actually been learning a bit about cooking recently." Do you see how easy it becomes when you give yourself permission to sound simple, honest, and natural? Now let's talk about agreeing and disagreeing politely, because this is a very important part of adult conversation, especially at the B1 to B2 level. In daily life, people often share opinions about work, food, films, routines, cities, habits, prices, weather, plans, and many other ordinary topics. When this happens, you need language that helps you agree warmly, partially agree, or disagree gently without sounding too strong or unfriendly. If someone says, "This week has gone by really slowly," you might agree by saying, "It really has." Or, "Yeah, I was thinking the same thing." Or, "Definitely. It feels like it should already be Friday." These are common, natural, and very useful. Now imagine you agree only partly. Maybe you understand the person, but your experience is a little different. Then you can say things like, "I know what you mean, but for me, it's actually been quite fast." Or, "That's true to some extent, although I've been so busy that it hasn't felt slow." Or, "Maybe, but I think next week will feel even longer." This kind of language is very valuable. Because real conversation is often not just yes or no. It is softer, more balanced, and more thoughtful. You can sound polite and natural even when your opinion is not exactly the same. Gentle disagreement is another skill that matters a lot, especially when you are talking to coworkers, friends, or people you do not know very well. You do not want to sound too direct by saying things like, "No, you're wrong," unless the situation is very special. In everyday life, people usually soften disagreement. They may say, "I'm not so sure about that. I see what you mean, but I think it depends." Maybe, although I'd probably look at it differently. Or, "I get your point, but I'm not sure I fully agree." These phrases are extremely useful because they allow you to be honest without sounding harsh. Let's imagine a conversation. "I think working from home is always better. I can see why people feel that way. But I think it depends on the person." Yeah, that's fair. Some people work better at home, but others prefer being around colleagues. That is a great example of polite disagreement, calm, respectful, and natural. Here is a small speaking exercise. I will give you an opinion, and you imagine 3 ways to respond: agree, partly agree, and disagree politely. The opinion is: big cities are the best places to live. To agree, you could say, I think so too. There's usually more to do and more opportunities. To partly agree, you could say, that's true in some ways, but they can also be quite stressful. To disagree politely, you could say, I understand why people like them, but I personally prefer somewhere quieter. This is exactly the kind of practice that helps your English become flexible, mature, and socially smooth. Now let's move into a skill that helps a lot when conversations become longer: knowing how to keep talking without feeling stuck. This is one of the biggest challenges for many learners. They know words, they understand questions, but after 1 or 2 sentences, they feel empty, as if the conversation has nowhere to go. The good news is that there are simple tools that help with this. One tool is adding a reason. Another is adding an example. Another is adding a small contrast. And another is asking a return question. These little moves can turn a short answer into a flowing answer very naturally. Let's take a simple question. Do you like cooking? A short answer is, yes, I do. That is correct, but it ends very quickly. Now, let's make it more natural. Yeah, I do, actually, especially when I have enough time. I find it relaxing. That already sounds better. Now, let's add a small example. Yeah, I do, actually, especially when I have enough time. I find it relaxing. I usually cook simple things, but I enjoy trying something new once in a while. Now the answer feels alive. Not because it is advanced, but because it moves naturally from opinion to reason to example. This is such an important speaking habit, and I really encourage you to practice it every day. Here is another example. Someone asks, how was your weekend? A short answer is, it was good. But a fuller natural answer could be, it was good, actually. I didn't do anything special, but I got some rest, and that's what I needed. Or maybe, it was quite nice. I met a friend for coffee on Saturday, and then had a quiet Sunday at home. Or even, honestly, it was a bit too short. I had a lot to do. Ciao, so it didn't feel very relaxing. These answers are not difficult, but they sound real. And that is what keeps conversations moving. Another helpful tool for longer conversations is linking your thoughts smoothly. Words and phrases like actually, to be honest, in general, at the moment, especially, at least, the thing is, for me, and on the other hand, can help your English sound more connected and natural. For example, I like mornings actually, especially when I don't have to rush. Or, to be honest, I haven't really thought about it that much. Or, in general, I prefer quiet places, although sometimes I enjoy being somewhere lively. These linking phrases give you breathing space. And they also make your speech sound more like real spoken English, because real speakers often use them to organize thoughts naturally as they talk. Let's imagine a longer everyday conversation between two friends. How have things been with you lately? Pretty good overall, although I've been a little tired recently. Yeah? What's been going on? Nothing serious. Really. I've just had a lot on my plate with work and family stuff. That sounds like a lot. It has been. But hopefully things will settle down soon. I hope so too. Have you had any time for yourself? Not much, but I'm trying to make more time for small breaks. This is a great example of flow. Each answer gives something real, and each question grows naturally from what was just said. That is exactly what you want to practice. Not perfect long speeches, but one real detail at a time. One natural reaction at a time. One follow-up question at a time. I also want to remind you that silence in conversation is not always a bad thing. Sometimes learners become nervous and think they must fill every second with words. But real conversations often include little pauses, small thinking moments, and gentle transitions. If you need a second, you can use natural holding phrases like, "Let me think. That's a good question. I'm not sure, actually. How can I put it?" Or, "It depends." These phrases are very useful because they give you a moment to think without breaking the conversation. For example, what kind of place would you like to live in one day? That's a good question. I think I'd like somewhere calm, but not too far from the city. That sounds thoughtful and natural, and it gives you time to shape your answer, which is a wonderful speaking skill. Imagine a short everyday conversation. Do you have any brothers or sisters? Yeah, I have one older brother. Are you close? We are now, although we used to argue a lot when we were younger. That sounds familiar. I think that happens in most families. This is a very natural exchange. And I want you to notice how one answer opens the door to the next question. If you only say, "Yes, I have one brother," the conversation may continue. But if you add one real detail, like, "We used to argue a lot," then the conversation becomes warmer and more interesting. That is the pattern I want you to keep strengthening. Answer. Then add one real detail. Then let the conversation breathe. Here is a useful little practice exercise. Imagine someone asks you 3 questions. Who are you closest to in your family? What is that person like? And do you spend a lot of time together? You could answer in a natural way by saying, "I'm probably closest to my sister. She's easy to talk to. And we understand each other quite well. We don't see each other every day, but we stay in touch regularly. Or maybe your answer would be, I'm closest to my mother. She's very supportive, and I usually go to her when I need advice. These are excellent everyday answers because they are simple, but emotionally real, and they sound like something a real person would actually say. Another common kind of daily conversation involves talking about friendships and social connections. Someone may ask, do you still see your old friends? Do you make friends easily? What kind of people do you get along with? Or do you prefer a small group of close friends or a big social circle? These are beautiful questions for B1 to B2 conversation practice because they allow you to express preferences, personality, and personal experience all at once. For example, if someone asks, do you make friends easily? You could say, it depends on the situation. I'm not usually the most outgoing person at first, but once I feel comfortable, I open up more. That answer sounds natural, balanced, and honest. Another answer could be, I think I do, especially if the other person is warm and easy to talk to. Or, not really, I'm friendly, but I usually take my time getting to know people. These are strong everyday responses because they reflect real personality rather than textbook English. Let's hear a natural conversation about friendship. Are you still in touch with your school friends? A few of them, yes. Not everyone, but there are 2 or 3 people I still talk to regularly. That's nice. Have you known them for a long time? Yeah, since we were teenagers, actually, so there's a lot of history there. This conversation feels simple, but it carries warmth, memory, and connection. And those are exactly the qualities that make English feel alive, not just correct, alive. That is a very important difference. And I want you to feel more and more comfortable with that kind of English as we continue. Now let's move into describing experiences and memories. Oh, because in everyday conversation, people often talk about things that happened recently, things they remember from the past, or little experiences that shaped how they feel now. Someone may ask, have you ever been there before? What was it like? How did that happen? Did you enjoy it? What do you remember most? Or when was the last time you did that? These questions appear all the time in daily conversation, especially when people talk about travel, work, school, family events, embarrassing moments, or good memories. At the B1 to B2 level, this is a wonderful area to practice because it helps you tell short stories, describe feelings, and create flow in conversation. For example, imagine someone asks, have you ever lived in another city? You could answer, yes. I did for a couple of years when I was younger, and it was a really interesting experience. At first, I found it difficult because everything felt unfamiliar. But after a while, I started to enjoy the change. That answer works beautifully because it includes time, feeling, change, and reflection. Another example. Someone asks, "What was your first job like?" You might say, "It was quite stressful at the beginning, mostly because I didn't know what I was doing, but I learned a lot from it, and it definitely made me more confident." This is exactly the kind of natural story-based English that helps you sound more fluent. Not because the words are advanced, but because the ideas move in a natural human way. Let's hear another example. Have you ever had a really embarrassing moment in public? Unfortunately, yes. Once I waved at someone I thought I knew, and it turned out to be a complete stranger. Oh no, that's the worst. It was so awkward at the time, but I can laugh about it now. This is a lovely everyday exchange because it mixes humor, emotion, and reflection, and it sounds very natural. Many daily conversations include exactly this kind of short story, not long dramatic storytelling. Just a little moment, described simply with a feeling attached to it. That is a skill you should practice often. Telling one small story clearly and naturally. Here is a speaking exercise you can try. Imagine someone asks you about a memorable day from the last year. It does not need to be a huge event. It could be a family gathering, a good weekend, a stressful workday, a trip, a celebration, or even a quiet day that stayed in your mind for some reason. Try answering with a simple structure. First say what happened, then say how you felt, then add one small detail about why you remember it. For example, one day I remember clearly was my friend's birthday dinner last summer. It was such a relaxed and happy evening. And I remember it so well because everyone seemed genuinely comfortable and present. Or maybe. A day I remember a lot was when I finally finished a project I had been worrying about for weeks. I felt exhausted, but really relieved. And I think I remember it because I had been carrying that stress for so long. These are wonderful practice answers because they help you connect events to feelings. And that makes your English much more expressive. Now let's move into giving advice in simple, natural English, because this happens so often in everyday conversations. Friends ask for advice. Coworkers ask for suggestions. Family members ask what you think they should do. And sometimes people do not directly ask for advice, but their words invite a response anyway. You may hear things like, "I'm not sure what to do." "I've been thinking about changing jobs. I don't know whether I should go or not." "I've been feeling a bit unmotivated lately." Or, "I can't decide." In these moments, you do not need to sound like an expert. You just need to sound thoughtful, calm, and natural. You can say things like, "If I were you, I'd take a little more time before deciding," or maybe it would help to talk it through with someone you trust. Or you could always try it and see how you feel. Or, honestly, I think you need a bit of rest first. These kinds of suggestions are extremely common in daily English. Let's imagine a natural conversation. "I've been thinking about taking a break from work for a while. Honestly, that might be a good idea. You've seemed really tired recently. Yeah, I just feel like I haven't had time to slow down. Then maybe that's a sign you need one. This conversation is not formal, but it is thoughtful. And that is what makes advice sound natural. It does not sound like a speech. It sounds like one person listening to another person and responding with care. Another example could be, I don't know whether I should move to a new apartment or stay where I am. That's a hard one. I guess it depends on how unhappy you are in your current place. If the problems are affecting you every day, then maybe a move would be worth it. This is strong B1 to B2 English because it allows you to sound measured, practical, and real. Now I want you to notice something important about advice. In everyday life, people often soften advice so it does not sound too strong. They say, maybe you should. It might help if. Have you thought about? One thing you could do is, or if it were me, I'd probably. These phrases are very useful because they make your suggestions sound respectful rather than controlling. Let's practice a few. Someone says, I've been feeling really stressed lately. You could respond with, maybe you need to take a proper break for a day or two. Or, it might help if you got away from your routine for a little while. Someone says, I can't focus when I study at home. You could say, have you thought about studying somewhere else for a change? Or, one thing you could do is try breaking your study time into shorter sessions. These are excellent patterns, and they are useful not only for speaking, but also for understanding other people when they give advice to you. Another kind of everyday conversation that becomes more common at the B1 to B2 level is talking about decisions, uncertainty, and change. This is very real-life English because adults are always thinking about choices, whether to start something new, leave something old, say yes, say no, take a risk, or wait. Someone may say, I'm not sure if it's the right time. Part of me wants to do it, but part of me doesn't. I've been going back and forth on it, or I just can't decide. These are rich, natural expressions, and they help you sound much more fluent because they reflect the way real people think, not in perfectly clean sentences, but in mixed feelings, hesitation, and reflection. Let's hear a natural example. So, are you going to apply for that job? I'm still not sure. Part of me really wants to, but part of me feels nervous about making a big change. That makes sense. It's a big decision. Yeah, I just don't want to rush into anything. This is such useful English, especially the phrases part of me. It's a big decision. And I don't want to rush into anything. These expressions appear everywhere in real adult conversation. And once you start using them, your English begins to sound more thoughtful and natural. Now let's talk a little about conversations that go slightly deeper. Not too serious, but more personal than small talk. This may happen with a friend, a relative, a colleague you trust, or someone you have slowly become comfortable with. They may ask questions like, "What's been on your mind lately? What do you want to focus on this year? Have you been happy where you are? What's something you've been thinking about a lot? Or do you feel like things are moving in the right direction?" These questions invite more reflective answers. And at the B1 to B2 level, you can absolutely begin to handle them in a calm and natural way. For example, if someone asks, "What's been on your mind lately?" you might say, "To be honest, I've been thinking a lot about balance, about how to work hard without constantly feeling tired." That is a beautiful answer because it is simple but meaningful. Another answer could be, "I've been thinking about what I want my routine to look like because lately it hasn't felt very healthy." Or maybe, "I've mostly been thinking about how to make better use of my time." These responses do not need difficult words. They just need honesty, calm phrasing, outgrow, and enough structure to express a real thought. Let's imagine a slightly deeper conversation. "You seem quieter than usual. Is everything okay?" "Yeah, I'm all right. I've just had a lot on my mind recently." "Do you want to talk about it?" "Maybe a little. I think I've just been feeling uncertain about a few things." That's understandable. We all go through phases like that. This is excellent everyday English because it shows care, openness, and emotional realism. Not dramatic, not artificial, just human. And that word is important here, human, because your goal is not only to sound correct, but to sound like a real person speaking honestly and naturally. Here is another speaking exercise for you. Imagine a friend asks you one of these questions. "What kind of life do you want in the future? What matters most to you these days?" Or, "What's something you've learned recently about yourself?" These are deeper questions, but you can still answer them with simple English. For example, "I think I want a life that feels calmer and more balanced, not necessarily perfect, just more stable." Or, "These days, I think peace of mind matters more to me than being busy all the time." Or, "Something I've learned recently is that I need more quiet time than I used to think." These answers sound thoughtful, but still natural. And that is a very strong place to reach in English. I also want to mention that in deeper conversations, listening becomes even more important. Sometimes the best response is not a big sentence, but a small one that shows presence. That makes sense. "I can understand that. That sounds difficult. You've clearly thought about it a lot. I'm glad you told me." Or, "That's actually really honest." These little responses are powerful because they help the other person feel heard. And in daily life, being a good conversational partner is not only about expressing yourself well, it is also about making space for other people's feelings and thoughts. That makes your English feel mature, warm, and socially confident. Imagine a simple everyday situation. You arrive 10 minutes late to meet a friend. A natural apology could be, "I'm so sorry I'm late. Traffic was worse than I expected." Or, "Sorry for keeping you waiting. I got held up on the way here." Both of these work well because they do two things. They apologize and they give a short explanation, not a long excuse, just a brief reason. That is often enough. Then the other person may respond with something like, "No worries. That's okay. Don't worry about it." Or, "It happens." These responses are very common, and they help release the tension quickly. Let's hear a short exchange. "I'm really sorry I'm late. The bus was delayed." "No problem. I've only just sat down." "Still, thanks for waiting." Of course, this is everyday English at its most useful, simple, kind, and socially smooth. Now let's look at another common kind of apology. Forgetting something. This happens all the time. You forget to reply. Forget to bring something. Forget someone's birthday. Forget a small task. Or forget what someone told you. In those situations, you might say, "I'm sorry. I completely forgot." Or, "Sorry, that slipped my mind." Or, "I should have remembered. I'm really sorry." That phrase, "it slipped my mind," is very natural and very useful because it sounds honest, but not too dramatic. For example, "Did you bring the document?" "Oh no, I'm so sorry. It completely slipped my mind. I can send it to you as soon as I get home." That sounds much more natural than just saying "I forgot" and stopping there, because it includes apology, explanation, and a possible solution. Now imagine the other person responds in a kind way. They might say, "That's all right. Don't worry. Just send it later." "It's okay. These things happen." Or, "No problem. I can wait until tomorrow." These are very useful phrases to understand and use because in daily life, most small mistakes are not disasters. They are just little moments of inconvenience. And the language around them is usually soft, calm, and forgiving. That is something I want you to remember. Everyday English is often about reducing tension, not increasing it. Let's practice a few apology situations together. Imagine you interrupt someone by mistake. You could say, "Sorry, go ahead." Or, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you." Imagine you step in front of someone in a shop line without realizing it. You could say, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize you were waiting." Imagine you reply to a message very late. You might write, "Sorry for the late reply. It's been a busy couple of days." Or, "I'm sorry I didn't get back to you sooner." These are all real, useful, and very common. And the more you practice them, the easier your daily interactions will become. Now let's move into forgiveness and understanding, because in conversation, apologizing is only one side. The other side is responding to mistakes in a calm and kind way. This matters a lot because in real life, people make small mistakes constantly. And most of the time, the natural response is not anger, but reassurance. You can say, "That's okay. No worries. Don't mention it. It's really not a problem. No harm done." Or "It happens." These phrases are wonderful to know because they help you sound generous, relaxed, and socially comfortable. For example, "I'm so sorry. I forgot to call you back." "That's okay. I figured you were busy." Or, "Sorry. I think I took your pen by mistake." "No worries. I was wondering where it had gone." These little exchanges are deeply practical, and they show how ordinary daily conversations often include small moments of repair and kindness. Sometimes forgiveness also includes a little emotional understanding, not just the words "that's okay," but a little added warmth. For example, "Don't worry about it. You've had a lot going on." Or, "It's all right. Anyone could have made the same mistake." Or, "Honestly, it wasn't a big deal." This kind of language helps make conversations feel human because it shows that you are not only accepting the apology, but also putting the mistake into perspective. Let's imagine a conversation. "I'm sorry I was a bit quiet earlier. I just wasn't feeling like myself." "That's okay. I could tell you seemed tired. Don't worry about it." This is very natural, and it teaches something important. Sometimes forgiveness is not only about the action, but also about understanding the mood or situation behind it. Now let's talk about gratitude, because this is another major part of everyday English, and one that many learners understand only in a basic way. Of course, thank you is important, and you should absolutely use it. But in daily conversation, English speakers often use many different ways to show appreciation, depending on the moment. They may say, "Thanks so much. I really appreciate it. That's so kind of you. Thanks for taking the time. I'm grateful for your help. I owe you one." Or, "That really means a lot." These little variations help your English sound more natural because gratitude in real life has many shades. Sometimes it is light, sometimes warm, sometimes sincere, and sometimes playful. Imagine a friend helps you carry something heavy. You might say, "Thanks. I really appreciate that." If someone waits for you patiently, you could say, "Thanks for waiting." If someone gives you advice when you needed it, however, you could say, "Thank you. That actually helped a lot." If someone does something especially thoughtful, you might say, "That was really kind of you," or "That means a lot. Thank you." These are excellent daily phrases because they fit real human situations and they help relationships feel warmer and more genuine. Now imagine someone thanks you. You also need natural ways to respond to gratitude. Not only "You're welcome" every single time. Although "you're welcome" is perfectly correct in everyday speech. People also say things like "no problem," "of course," "anytime," "happy to help," "it was nothing," or "don't mention it." These replies are very common, and they often sound more relaxed in daily conversation. For example, "Thanks for helping me with that." "Of course," "happy to help," or "thank you for waiting," "no problem at all," or "thanks so much, I really appreciate it." "Anytime." These responses are soft, friendly, and useful in many situations. Let's hear a natural gratitude exchange. "Thank you for listening. I really needed to talk." "Of course. I'm glad you did." That is a beautiful little example because it shows emotional gratitude, not just practical gratitude, and both kinds matter in real life. Another example. "Thanks for covering for me earlier. No problem. I know you would have done the same for me." This kind of response sounds warm, supportive, and very natural. And it helps conversations feel more real than a simple "you're welcome" repeated all the time. Now let's move into awkward situations, because real conversations are full of them. Not constantly, but enough that you need language for them. Sometimes you forget someone's name. Sometimes you say something and then realize it sounded strange. Sometimes you misunderstand a joke. Sometimes you bring up a topic that turns out to be uncomfortable. Sometimes you walk into a room at the wrong moment. Sometimes you think someone saw you, but they did not. These are little awkward moments. And being able to handle them with calm English is a very useful skill. Very often, English speakers use light language and small humor to reduce the awkwardness. They may say, "Well, that was awkward. Sorry, that came out wrong. I hope that didn't sound rude. I think I misunderstood. Please ignore me. I'm tired today." Or, "Let me say that again more clearly." These phrases are very human, and they help soften uncomfortable moments. Imagine you ask someone a personal question, and then realize it may have been too direct. You could say, "Sorry. You don't have to answer that if you'd rather not." That is a very respectful and useful sentence. Another situation. Imagine you say a joke, but no one responds the way you expected. You might smile and say, "Well, that sounded funnier in my head." That kind of light self-awareness can help awkwardness pass naturally. Another example. "Oh, sorry. I thought you were someone else for a second." That is extremely useful in daily life, especially in public places. And it sounds completely natural. The key thing here is this: awkward moments do not need perfect rescue. They just need a calm, human response, often with a little softness or humor. Let's practice with a few real situations. Imagine you forget someone's name just after being introduced. You might say, "I'm so sorry. I've completely forgotten your name. Oh, or slightly more lightly. I'm sorry. Your name has gone right out of my head. Imagine you start talking about a film and then realize the other person has not seen it. You could say, "Oh, sorry. I don't want to spoil anything." Imagine you say something too quickly and the other person looks confused. You might say, "Sorry, that didn't come out very clearly. What I meant was..." These are all strong everyday repair phrases, and they are the kind of language that makes you sound steady, even when the situation itself feels slightly awkward. Now let's talk about making excuses politely. This is such a common part of adult conversation, and I want to be clear here. I do not mean dishonest excuses. I mean polite explanations for saying no, leaving early, not being able to join, or not doing something right away. In real life, people often need to protect their time, energy, or schedule, and English uses many soft ways to do this. You might say, "I'd love to, but I've already got plans. I'm afraid I can't stay long. I wish I could, but I need to get up early tomorrow. I'm a bit tied up this week," or "I've got a few things I need to take care of." These phrases are very useful because they help you be polite without over-explaining. And that is an important social skill. Being polite does not mean giving your whole life story. Sometimes a short, respectful explanation is enough. Imagine your coworker says, "Do you want to grab a drink after work?" But you are too tired. A natural answer could be, "Thanks. I'd love to another time, but I'm really tired today." Or, "That sounds nice, but I need to head home tonight." Or, "I can't today. Unfortunately, but let me know next time." All of these are polite, friendly, and socially comfortable. They say no, but they do not close the relationship, and that is very important. Another example: a friend invites you to something at the weekend, and you cannot go. You could say, "I'm really sorry. I won't be able to make it." Or, "I'd love to, but I've already committed to something else." These are natural daily phrases, and once you feel confident with them, social English becomes much less stressful. Sometimes you also need a short excuse for leaving a conversation or ending an interaction. Maybe you need to catch a bus, answer a call, go back to work, or simply leave without being rude. In those moments, you can say things like, "I should get going. I'd better head off. I need to get back to work. I won't keep you any longer. I should let you go." Or, "I've got to run." These are extremely common, and they are some of the most useful phrases in everyday English. Because ending conversations smoothly is a real-life skill that many learners do not practice enough. Let's imagine a natural conversation ending between neighbors. "It was nice talking to you." "Yeah, you too. I should get going. I still need to make dinner." "Of course. Have a good evening. You too. Take care. This is very normal and very useful. Nobody gives a long, dramatic ending. They simply use a soft exit phrase, a kind closing remark, and a polite goodbye. Another example in a work setting. Anyway, I should let you get back to it. No worries. Good luck with the rest of your day. Thanks. You too. Again, simple, but extremely natural. And exactly the kind of English that makes daily life easier. Now let's look a little more closely at how to end conversations warmly. Because there is a difference between stopping a conversation and ending it well. A warm ending often includes one of these things: appreciation, a future connection, a good wish, or a brief positive comment. For example, it was really nice catching up. We should do this again sometime. Take care. Hope the rest of your day goes smoothly. Good luck tomorrow, or enjoy your weekend. These phrases help conversations end with comfort rather than suddenness. And they are wonderful little tools to have ready in your mind. Let's hear a fuller example. Joe, thanks for meeting up today. It was really nice to talk. Yeah, I'm glad we did this. We should do it again sometime soon. Definitely. Let me know when you're free. I will. Take care on your way home. You too. Message me when you get back. This kind of ending feels human, friendly, and complete. It gives both people a smooth way out of the conversation, while still showing warmth and connection. That is exactly what you want in real English. Not just beginning conversations well, but also ending them well. Here is a useful speaking exercise for you. Imagine 5 everyday situations. In the first, you arrive late to lunch with a friend. In the second, someone helps you carry a heavy bag. In the third, you need to leave a conversation because you have an appointment. In the fourth, you accidentally interrupt someone. In the fifth, you cannot accept an invitation to dinner. Try saying one natural sentence for each situation. For arriving late. I'm so sorry, I'm late. The traffic was awful. For help. Thanks so much. I really appreciate that. For leaving. I should get going, but it was lovely talking to you. For interrupting. Sorry. Go ahead. For refusing an invitation. I'd love to, but I can't this time. These may seem small, but together they build a huge part of real daily fluency. Because life is full of exactly these moments. I also want to remind you that confidence in conversation is often built through these small social skills, not only through big vocabulary or complex grammar. A person can speak very simple English, but still sound natural, warm, and confident if they know how to apologize, how to thank someone, how to soften a refusal, how to respond kindly to mistakes, and how to end a conversation smoothly. Those skills are powerful, And very often they matter more in daily life than advanced grammar rules because they help people feel comfortable around you. And that comfort is a big part of what fluent communication really is. Let's imagine a natural conversation about routine. Are you someone who likes routines? Yeah, to some extent. I feel better when my days have some structure. Same here. I get stressed when everything feels too random. Exactly. I don't need every minute planned, but I do like knowing roughly how my day will go. This is such a useful kind of exchange because it shows agreement, personal preference, and a little explanation, all inside a very normal daily topic. Another example could be, do you usually eat breakfast at home? Most of the time. Yes. Although if I'm running late, I'll just grab something small and take it with me. This answer sounds real because it includes the usual pattern and the exception. And that is something people do constantly in daily conversation. They say what normally happens and then what happens when life is a little different. Here is a speaking exercise you can try right now. Imagine someone asks you to describe your weekday from morning to night, but in a natural spoken way, not as a formal presentation. You might say, my weekdays are usually fairly predictable. I get up, take a little time to wake up properly, and then start my day. By the afternoon, I'm normally focused on work or whatever I need to get done. And in the evening, I try to slow down a bit, even if it's just for an hour. That sounds much more natural than saying only, I wake up at 7, I work, I eat dinner, I sleep. Of course, that short version is grammatically fine, but the fuller version sounds more human, more relaxed, and more like real spoken English. That is exactly the kind of shift I want you to keep making, from correct but flat to correct and alive. Now let's move into describing everyday problems and solutions more clearly, because daily conversation often revolves around little difficulties, not huge emergencies, but small things that affect your day. Being tired, forgetting something important, missing transport, having a bad internet connection, feeling unprepared, not having enough time, or dealing with an unexpected change. When people talk about these problems, they often do three things naturally. They explain what happened, they describe the effect, and they say what they did or plan to do about it. Learning this pattern is extremely useful because it helps your English sound organized and practical, even when the situation itself is frustrating. For example, imagine someone asks, "Why do you seem so tired today?" A natural answer could be, "I didn't sleep very well last night, so I've been feeling a bit slow all day. I'm just hoping I can get to bed early tonight." That is such a strong everyday answer because it explains the cause, the result, and the solution. Another example. You're a bit late. Everything okay? Yeah. I just missed my bus. And the next one took ages. So the whole morning got pushed back. But at least I made it in the end. Again, clear, natural, and realistic. These are exactly the kinds of everyday mini explanations that help you function smoothly in English. Let's imagine a fuller conversation about a small daily problem. You look a bit stressed. What happened? Honestly, the whole morning went wrong. I couldn't find my keys. Then I realized I'd left an important document at home. And after that, I got stuck in traffic. That sounds like one of those days. It really was. But I've done most of what I needed to do now. So it's getting better. This is wonderful practical English because it sounds like something a real person would say after a hard morning. It is not too formal, not too dramatic, just honest and clear. And notice something important here, even when describing a problem. The speaker still gives a sense of movement. Things went wrong, but now they are improving. That kind of balance makes your English sound thoughtful and realistic. Now I want you to practice this pattern with a few examples. Imagine someone asks why you seem distracted. You could say, "I've just got a lot on my mind today, and I didn't organize my morning very well. So I feel like I'm catching up with everything now." Imagine someone asks why you could not answer a message earlier. You might say, "Sorry. I saw your message late because I was dealing with a few things, and by the time I had a moment, I completely forgot to reply." Imagine someone asks why you had to cancel a plan. You could say, "Something unexpected came up at home, and I had to stay and deal with it. I was really disappointed to miss it, though." These are all very strong B1 to B2 answers because they sound clear, natural, and emotionally appropriate. They explain without sounding stiff, and that is a big part of everyday fluency. Another important skill is knowing how to talk through a solution or a next step, not only the problem itself. In adult daily conversation, people often move quite quickly from what went wrong to what I'm going to do now, or what would help. For example, my laptop has been acting strangely all week, so I think I'm finally going to take it in and get it checked. Or, I've been feeling really unorganized lately, so I'm trying to plan my week a bit better. Or, the kitchen tap has been leaking for days, and I keep forgetting to call someone about it. But I really need to deal with it this weekend. These are such real-life sentences, and they help you sound practical and grounded, not just descriptive, but problem-solving, which is a very useful conversational skill. Let's hear a natural conversation with that feeling of movement toward a solution. How's your week been? A bit messy, to be honest. I've been trying to catch up on too many things at once. Yeah, that's exhausting. It is. But I'm trying to deal with one thing at a time instead of thinking about everything at once. That sounds like the best approach. This is everyday English at a very good level because it includes honesty, emotional realism, and a practical way of thinking forward. That is something you can use in so many real conversations, especially when talking about work, home, habits, or personal stress. Now, let's move back into social plans, but this time in a more detailed and flexible way, because at the B1 to B2 level, you need more than just yes or no to invitations. You need language for showing interest, in making suggestions, checking details, hesitating politely, and changing the plan if necessary. This is so useful because much of adult conversation includes planning simple things: meeting for coffee, visiting someone, having dinner, going somewhere for the day, joining a group activity, or arranging a time to talk. These situations sound small, but they require a lot of useful natural English. Imagine someone says, "We're thinking of getting dinner on Friday. Do you want to come?" A very natural answer could be, "That sounds nice. What time are you thinking?" Or possibly, "Where were you planning to go?" Or, "I'd like to. I just need to see what my schedule looks like first." These answers all keep the conversation open, and they sound much more natural than only saying yes or no. Now imagine you want to make a suggestion yourself. You could say, "Why don't we go somewhere quieter this time?" Or, "We could meet a bit earlier if that works better for everyone." Or, "How about just keeping it simple and getting coffee instead?" These little suggestion patterns are very common, and once they start feeling natural to you, planning conversations become much easier. Let's hear a more complete social planning exchange. "Do you want to meet up this weekend?" "Yeah, I'd like that." "I'm not sure how free I'll be on Saturday, though that's okay. Sunday might work too." "Your Sunday would probably be better. What did you have in mind?" "Maybe lunch somewhere, and then a walk if the weather's nice." That actually sounds perfect. This is a lovely example because it shows flexibility, cooperation, and natural rhythm. Nobody is speaking in long, perfect speeches, but everything feels smooth, polite, and easy to follow. And that is exactly how real planning conversations usually sound. Now let's practice something very common: showing interest in a plan without sounding too formal. If a friend tells you about an idea, like going away for a short trip, trying a new restaurant, or inviting a few people over, you can respond with phrases like, "That sounds really nice." That could be fun. "I'd be up for that." "That actually sounds like a good idea." Or, "I haven't done that in ages. That could be nice." These phrases are so useful because they help create warmth and energy in conversation. They show that you are engaged, interested, and open, even before the details are decided. Of course, sometimes plans become uncertain. And this is another part of daily English that you should feel comfortable with. People say things like, "I'll let you know. I'm not 100% sure yet. It depends how the week goes. I might be able to. I don't want to promise just yet. Or I'll have a better idea tomorrow. These phrases are excellent because real life is often uncertain, and fluent speakers need language for uncertainty, not just language for certainty. For example, are you coming on Saturday? I'm not completely sure yet, but I should know by Friday. That sounds natural, honest, and socially comfortable. It keeps the relationship smooth while still being truthful. Now, let's spend time on telling longer everyday stories, because this is one of the biggest steps from intermediate English into more natural and confident spoken English. In daily life, people are constantly telling small stories, not dramatic stories, but ordinary ones. How they ended up being late. But something funny that happened at the supermarket. A strange conversation they had. A moment from the weekend. A problem they solved. Or an encounter that stayed in their mind. These stories usually follow a simple pattern. First the setting, then the event, then the result or reaction, and often one final thought. If you learn that pattern, storytelling becomes much easier. Let's take a very ordinary story as an example. Someone asks, "How was your morning?" You could simply say, "It was fine." But a more natural story style answer might be, "It started badly, actually, because I woke up later than I meant to, and then I realized I'd forgotten to charge my phone overnight. And so everything felt a bit rushed from that point on. But after that, the day settled down a bit." That is not a big story, but it sounds alive. It has sequence, detail, and feeling. And that is what makes people want to listen. Another example. How was your weekend? Pretty nice, actually. On Saturday, I met a friend I hadn't seen in a while, and we ended up talking for much longer than we expected. Then Sunday was much quieter, which was exactly what I needed. Again, simple, but natural and complete. Let's look at another kind of story. Something slightly funny or awkward, because these often come up in casual conversation. Imagine someone asks, "Shu, did anything interesting happen today?" You could say, "Actually, yes. I had one of those slightly embarrassing moments this morning. I was in a rush, and I walked into a cafe thinking I was at the right place. But after about 30 seconds, I realized I'd gone into the wrong one completely." That already sounds engaging, and you can continue. It wasn't a big deal, but for a second I was very confused, and then I just had to laugh at myself. That is excellent everyday spoken English, because it feels like the kind of small story people genuinely tell each other all the time. Light, descriptive, and human. Now I want you to notice how helpful little linking phrases are in storytelling. Phrases like actually, so, at first, for a second, in the end, by the time, after that. The strange thing was, what made it worse was, or The good thing is, these phrases help your story flow naturally, and they give your listener a clear path through what happened. For example, at first, I thought it wasn't a problem, but then I realized I'd misunderstood the time completely. Or, the strange thing was, I was sure I had written it down correctly. Or, in the end, everything worked out fine, but it was stressful at the time. These are wonderful conversation tools, and the more you use them, the less your English will feel like separate sentences, and the more it will feel like connected speech. Here is a good speaking exercise. Think of a small thing that happened to you recently. Not a major life event, just a real everyday moment. Maybe you forgot something, got stuck somewhere, met someone unexpectedly, changed your plans, or had a surprisingly nice moment. Now try telling it in 4 parts. First, where and when it happened. Second, what happened. Third, how you felt. And fourth, how it ended. For example, a couple of days ago, I was on my way home when I suddenly realized I had left something important at work. At first, I was really annoyed with myself because I was already tired. But in the end, it turned out not to be such a big problem because a colleague was still there and helped me sort it out. That is exactly the kind of ordinary storytelling that makes conversation feel real and natural. Let's imagine a longer everyday conversation between 2 people catching up. So, how's everything been with you lately? Mostly all right, although the last few days have felt a bit all over the place. Yeah? What's been going on? Nothing huge, just lots of small things at once. I've been trying to keep up with work, sort out a few things at home, and still have enough energy left by the evening. That can be a lot, especially when it all happens together. Exactly. And then yesterday, I had one of those silly days where every little thing seemed to go wrong. I spilled coffee in the morning, forgot to reply to an important message, and nearly went to the wrong place in the afternoon. That sounds exhausting. It really was. But weirdly enough, by the evening I could laugh about it. Sometimes that's all you can do. This is a fantastic model of natural adult conversation because it combines routine, stress, storytelling, reaction, and light humor all in a very ordinary and believable way. Another useful skill in longer conversations is knowing how to show that you are still listening while the other person is speaking, even if you are not asking a full question yet. Small listening phrases help a lot. You can say, right. Yeah, I know what you mean. Really? That makes sense. Exactly. That sounds frustrating. I can imagine. Or, oh no. These small responses keep the conversation alive. And they make your English sound much more natural, because real conversations are rarely silent while one person speaks for a long time. There are usually little signs of listening throughout, and those signs matter a lot, especially in friendly conversation. Imagine you meet a friend you have not seen in a couple of weeks. You smile and say, "Hey, it's been a while. How have you been?" And they answer, "Pretty good overall. Just a bit busy lately. How about you?" Already. That is a very natural beginning. Then you continue. "More or less the same. I've had a lot going on, but nothing too dramatic." And your friend says, "Yeah, sometimes it's the small things that wear you out the most." That one sentence right there is the kind of thing native speakers say all the time. Not because it is advanced, but because it sounds thoughtful and real. Then maybe you add a little detail. Exactly. It's not one huge problem. It's just been one thing after another this week. And suddenly the conversation has opened naturally. Nobody is trying to sound perfect. They are simply sharing something real. And that is exactly what good everyday English sounds like. Let's keep going with that same conversation. Your friend asks, "What's been taking up most of your time?" And now you have a chance to answer in a fuller B1 to B2 way. You could say, "Mostly work, to be honest. And then when I get home, I still have a few personal things to deal with. So by the evening, I feel like I've run out of energy." That is such a useful everyday answer because it sounds natural, honest, and complete. Then your friend might respond, "Yeah," or "I know that feeling." Sometimes the day ends before you've had a moment to breathe. And you could say, "Exactly. That's what it feels like." This kind of exchange is very important because it shows how conversations grow through shared feeling, not only through facts. When you can describe what your day feels like, not only what happened, your English starts sounding more human and more connected. Now imagine the conversation turns toward routine, as many daily conversations do. Your friend says, "Have you been able to keep any kind of routine lately?" You could answer, "I've been trying, but not very successfully. I start the week with good intentions. And then by the middle of the week, everything gets a bit messy." That sentence is very natural and very relatable. Another answer could be, "A little. I've been trying to wake up earlier and not look at my phone straight away. And honestly, it's helped more than I expected." That is wonderful everyday English because it includes action, feeling, and reflection. Then your friend could ask a follow-up question like, "Has it made a big difference?" And you might reply, "Not a huge difference, but enough that I notice it. I feel a bit calmer in the morning." Do you hear the softness of that language? It is not extreme. It is balanced, realistic, and natural. And that is exactly the tone you want to develop. Now let's move into a very common kind of conversation, talking about something that went wrong, but in a relaxed, everyday way. Suppose someone asks, "So, how was your morning?" And you do not want to say only fine because that feels too flat. You could say, honestly, it started badly. I overslept a little, and after that, everything felt rushed. Or, it was all right in the end. But I had one of these mornings where nothing happened when it was supposed to. That phrase, one of those mornings, is extremely natural and very useful because it helps express a whole feeling in a simple way. Then maybe the other person says, "Oh no, what happened?" And you continue with a small story. First, I couldn't find my keys. Then I realized I'd forgotten to charge my phone. And after that, I missed the bus by about 30 seconds. That sounds real, light, and easy to follow. Then you could end with, so yes, not the smoothest start to the day, but it got better after that. And there, you have just told a complete little everyday story in English. Naturally, clearly, and without needing difficult vocabulary. Another thing that happens all the time in daily life is talking about people you saw, places you went, or things you did in a casual and descriptive way. Someone might ask, "Did you do anything nice over the weekend?" And if you answer only yes, I did. The conversation may stop too soon, but if you say, actually, yes, I met up with an old friend on Saturday, and it was really nice because we hadn't talked properly in ages. Now the conversation has something to work with. Then the other person may ask, "Oh, really? How long had it been?" And you can say, "Probably close to a year," which is why it felt so good to catch up. This is very good. B1 to B2 conversation because the answer contains time, feeling, and reflection, all in a very simple, natural way. Then you could continue. We didn't do anything special, just had coffee and talked for hours. But sometimes that's exactly what you need. That is a beautiful example of natural daily English. Simple, warm, and human. Let's stay with weekend conversation a little longer because it is one of the most common daily topics in the world. If someone asks, "How was your weekend?" you have many ways to answer naturally. You could say, "It was pretty quiet," which I actually needed. Or, "It was nice, busier than I expected, but in a good way." Or, "Honestly, it went by too fast. I don't feel ready for Monday yet." All of those sound real, and they sound like something a person would genuinely say. Then you can add one more detail to keep the conversation moving. I spent most of Saturday doing things around the house. And then on Sunday, I finally had time to relax a bit. Or I ended up seeing family, which was lovely. But by Sunday evening, I was completely exhausted. This is what I mean by living English, not stiff English, not textbook English, but English that feels attached to real time, real energy, and real experience. Now let's look at a conversation where someone asks your opinion in a more casual way. Maybe a coworker says, "What do you think of this place?" Or a friend asks, "Do you think it's worth going?" Or someone says, "Would you recommend it?" At the B1 to B2 level, it helps a lot if you can answer with a little balance. not just yes or no. For example, I think it's worth it, especially if you like somewhere relaxed, or it's nice, although it does get a bit crowded later in the evening, or I'd recommend it, but probably not on weekends because it gets too busy. That is such practical, everyday English because in real life, opinions are often mixed, not fully positive, not fully negative, just balanced. And the more you can express that balance, the more mature and natural your English will sound. Let's imagine a complete conversation in a cafe. Have you been here before? Only once, a while ago, but I remember liking it. What's the coffee like? Pretty good, actually, although I think their food is better than their drinks. Oh, really? What did you have last time? Just something simple, but it was fresh, and the atmosphere was nice too. That is wonderful everyday English, because nothing in it is difficult, but everything flows. And each answer gives just enough information to keep the other person interested. That is a powerful skill. And it comes from practicing natural expansions, not trying to sound overly impressive. Now I want to show you how daily conversation often includes soft transitions from one topic to another. Because many learners feel they can answer a question, but they are less confident when the conversation shifts direction. In real life, people often move gently between topics using phrases like anyway. Speaking of that reminds me, by the way, or actually, that's kind of related to something else. These little phrases make your English sound much more natural because they reflect the way real conversations wander. For example, yeah, my weekend was nice. Actually, speaking of weekends, do you have anything planned for this one? Or, that reminds me, I still need to reply to Emma. Or, by the way, did you ever hear back from them? These are small expressions, but they are incredibly useful because they help conversations feel smooth rather than disconnected. Let's practice a more complete dialogue that includes several everyday skills at once. Imagine two co-workers talking in the afternoon. You look tired. Long day. Very. It's been one of those days where I've been busy from the moment I sat down. Yeah? What's been happening? A bit of everything. Really, emails, meetings, and a few last-minute problems that I wasn't expecting. That sounds exhausting. It has been, but I think the worst of it is over now. That's good. Have you got much left to do? A little, but nothing too serious. I'm mostly just trying to get through the rest of the day at this point. I know the feeling. This is extremely good everyday English because it sounds honest, natural, and emotionally real. There is no need for fancy grammar here. What makes it strong is the rhythm, the detail, and the way each sentence connects to the last one. Now let's turn that same scene into something slightly more social. Maybe one coworker then says, "A few of us might grab something to eat after work, if you feel up to it." And the other person answers, "That actually sounds nice. Although I may not stay out too long. I'm really low on energy today." That answer is perfect for daily life because it says yes, but honestly, with a gentle limit. Then the coworker says, "That's fine, even if you just come for a little while." And the response could be, "Yeah, that might be exactly what I need actually." Something relaxed before heading home. This is a great example of everyday social English. Soft, flexible, and comfortable. Not too strong, not too cold, just real. Another everyday skill that matters a lot is knowing how to show interest without sounding too formal. Sometimes learners ask very direct textbook-like follow-up questions, and while those can be correct, they do not always sound natural in friendly conversation. In everyday English, follow-up questions are often softer, shorter, and more curious in tone. For example, instead of always asking, "Why did you choose that?" you might say, "What made you go with that?" Instead of, "Did you enjoy your holiday?" you might say, How was it?" Instead of, "Was the event satisfactory?" you would simply say, "How did it go?" These little shifts matter because they make your English feel more spoken, more relaxed, and more connected to real life. So if someone says, "I finally went to that new place near the station," you could ask, "Oh yeah, how was it?" Or, "Was it worth it?" Or, "What was it like?" Those are beautiful, everyday questions. Simple, natural, and very useful. Let's now practice a conversation that includes feelings, plans, and a small story all in one flow. How have you been lately? Up and down. To be honest, some days have felt fine, and others have felt a bit heavy. Yeah? What's been making it feel heavy? I think I've just had too much going on without enough real rest. You know when life is full, but not in a very satisfying way? Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. That's kind of where I've been recently, which is why I'm trying to keep this weekend as calm as possible. That sounds like a good idea. Do you have any plans at all? Nothing major, and that's the point. I just want one or two quiet things. Maybe coffee with a friend. Maybe a walk. And not much else. Honestly, that sounds ideal. This is strong everyday B1 to B2 English because it sounds reflective, natural, and emotionally clear, without becoming too complex. It is exactly the kind of English that makes conversation feel real and comfortable. One more thing I want you to remember is that confidence in conversation often comes from repetition of useful structures, not from trying to invent everything from the beginning each time. Phrases like, "to be honest," "kind of," "a bit," "more or less," "in the end," "at this point," "nothing too serious," "one of those days," "that sounds nice," "I know what you mean," and hopefully, are all very common in natural spoken English. And the more you practice them, the more they begin to support you during real conversations. They give your speech shape, tone, and rhythm. And they help you sound more fluent without needing to search for a completely new sentence every single time. That is one of the secrets of real everyday fluency. Not speaking in a complicated way, but speaking in a familiar, connected, natural way. So as you keep practicing, I want you to pay attention to 3 simple things. First, answer with one real detail. Second, react to what the other person says in a warm and natural way. And third, do not rush to make your English perfect. Let it be real. Let it breathe. Let it sound like a person thinking and speaking. Because that is what everyday conversation really is. A living exchange between 2 people. Not a grammar test. Not a performance. Just real communication, one small moment at a time. Imagine you are talking to someone at the end of a normal day. Maybe a friend, maybe a coworker, maybe a family member. And they ask, "So, how was your day in the end?" That question is simple, but it gives you so many options. You could say, "It turned out better than I expected. The morning was a bit rough, but things got easier later on." Or, "Honestly, it was a long day, but not a bad one. Just one of those days where I needed more energy than I had." Or, "It was actually quite nice. Nothing special happened, but everything felt calm. And I think I needed that." These answers are strong because they are real. They do not try too hard. They do not sound like a lesson. They sound like a person speaking honestly. And that is what makes everyday English powerful. Now imagine the conversation continues naturally. The other person says, "That's good. Have you got a quieter day tomorrow?" And you answer, "I hope so. Although I've learned not to trust my schedule too much lately." That little line sounds very natural, and it adds personality. Then maybe the other person laughs and says, "Yeah, plans have a way of changing." And you respond, "Exactly. I try to stay organized, but I also try not to expect everything to go perfectly." This is the kind of everyday flow I want you to remember. Short turns, real thoughts, athlete reaction, natural rhythm. That is how conversations feel when they are alive. Not forced, just alive. Let's look at one more full daily life exchange that brings many of these skills together. "You seem more relaxed today." "Yeah. I think I finally slept properly. And that made a bigger difference than I expected." "That's good. You looked exhausted earlier this week." "I was. Honestly. I think I was just doing too much without taking a proper break." That happens so easily. It really does. You think you're managing everything, and then suddenly you realize you're running on empty. Exactly. That's such a real feeling. So this weekend, I'm trying not to fill every hour with something. That sounds like a good plan. I think so too. I just want a little space to breathe. This is very natural. B1 to B2 English, because it includes feeling, reflection, agreement, and a small future plan, all in ordinary language. And that is exactly how real people often speak, one honest layer at a time. I also want you to remember that not every conversation needs to be long for your English to be good. Sometimes just a few natural lines are enough. If someone asks, "Have you been busy?" and you say, "A little, yes, but I'm trying to keep things under control." That is already good everyday English. If someone asks, "Did you enjoy it?" and you answer, "I did, more than I thought I would." Actually, that is already natural. If someone says, "You look tired," and you reply, "I am a bit, but I'll be fine after a quiet evening," that is already real conversation. So do not think that fluency always means speaking for a long time. Sometimes fluency means saying something simple, but saying it in a way that feels calm, clear, and natural. Here is one final practice exercise for you. I want you to imagine 3 very ordinary moments. In the first moment, someone asks how your week has been. In the second, someone invites you to do something this weekend. In the third, someone tells you they have had a stressful day. Try to answer each moment in a real human way. For the first, you might say, "It's been a bit mixed. To be honest, some parts of the week have felt productive, and other parts have just felt tiring." For the second, you could say, "That sounds nice. I'm not completely sure yet, but there's a good chance I'll be free." For the third, you might respond with, "I'm sorry to hear that." Those kinds of days can really take it out of you. These are not difficult sentences, but they are exactly the kind of sentences that make everyday conversation feel warm and natural. And that is something I really want you to hold on to as you keep practicing. You do not need to sound perfect. You do not need to sound impressive. And you do not need to rush. What you need is steady practice with real patterns, real reactions, real details, and real feelings. Because everyday English is not built from perfect performances. It is built from many small moments where you answer honestly, listen carefully, respond kindly, and stay inside the conversation a little longer than before. That is how your English becomes stronger, not all at once, but naturally, slowly, and in a way that truly stays with you. Thank you so much, my dear English learners, for staying here with me until the end of this lesson. I'm truly so happy that we could spend this time together, practicing real everyday English in a calm, simple, and meaningful way. I hope this lesson helped you feel a little more confident, a little more relaxed, and a little more ready to use English in your daily life. Please remember, you do not need to speak perfectly to speak well. You just need to keep going, one sentence at a time, one conversation at a time. and one small step at a time. If you enjoyed learning with me today, please subscribe and press the bell icon too, so you don't miss our next daily English lesson. And if you want, you can come back to this lesson again and again. Listen carefully. Repeat the phrases. Practice the conversations. And let the language become more natural in your mind and in your voice. Thank you again for learning with me, for your time, your trust, and your beautiful effort. Take a deep breath. Be proud of yourself. Keep practicing gently, and I'll be here to continue this journey with you very soon. Until next time, take care and keep speaking English with confidence.